You're live, I think. Good evening, everyone. I do believe I'm live there. Sound okay, can I? Very good. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again. Firstly, I have to apologise for last evening's live stream. We did have some issue with the sound, actually. And I know some of you were getting the sound loud and clear. We were getting some messages that the sound was breaking up, and indeed Caroline listening to it here, the sound was breaking up. So those gremlins somewhere in the pipeline. So it's a learning curve for us all, and from here on in we'll just continue with the live, and hopefully the majority of those watching can hear. And when we've watched the live we put out last night, when we watched them back, the sound was fine. So we're going to move on this evening with our look at the Burnsite. And this is the site where the car allegedly used in the Northern robbery was burned out between Newtown, Hamilton and Cady in Northern Ireland. Now, as I said at the beginning of our stream yesterday evening, and I've mentioned this on numerous occasions, the evidence presented by the DPP and Garda Síochána in relation to the vehicle that was burned at the Burnsite down near Cady and Newtown Hamilton is absolutely, it's farcical, it's ludicrous, it is preposterous, it's absurd, it's slapstick, it's hysterical, it's harebrained, it's all of these things. And if it wasn't so serious, it would really, really be laughable the way the evidence was presented. So we're taking point B. Point A is where the Northern robbery took place, and point B is 35 kilometres away where a vehicle was burned out, as I say, between Newtown, Hamilton and Cady. So the first thing is we have to look at this 35 kilometres. It is travelled mainly on the main Dundalk Armagh Road, and at that time, and still is, a main artery for the PSNI travelling from the main station in South Armagh, which is in Newtown Hamilton, to the Crossmaglen police station. So we say from the outset, it is absolutely ludicrous that anyone would consider, after being involved in an armed robbery, to travel that road. There could be checkpoints at any number of points along that road. And we are saying quite clearly, two vehicles travelling, one on that road, one stolen, and one allegedly belonging to one of the young men, would travel that road. It simply did not happen. And to put some context into this whole story that was generated by the DPP and Garda Síochána, we have to give, as part of Aaron's campaign, some reasoning as we see why Garda Síochána used this vehicle that obviously was not used in the murder and robbery at Lordship Credit Union. And to that end, I think last night I very briefly showed a Newstalk article that was created just 4 days after the murder and robbery, and I'm not sure if you can see that there with the light or whatever, but there is a link in it that was burned out at Darkley. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this. A car burned out has been found in County Armagh, which is believed to have been used by the gang responsible for the shooting dead of Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue in County Louth. It's understood Garda and PSNI believe the criminal gang from the North Louth, South Armagh area are behind the raid on the Lordship Credit Union, which took place at around 9:30 on Friday night. The burned out car, dark coloured, was found yesterday at Darkley near Cady, 25 miles from the scene of the attack. Garda and the PSNI believe it was used by a gang from North Louth, South Armagh area, who are the chief suspects in Friday night's attack. The same gang are believed to have been behind the similar raid on the same credit union in 2011, during which €62,000 was stolen. So there's a number of very simple little points of information which on Garda Síochána has given Newstalk there. So the first thing I really want to raise is the last paragraph there, that Gardaí believe that it is the same gang that carried out the raid in which Detective Adrian Donoghue lost his life, and carried out the raid 11 months earlier. So it's quite a short time. But we have been told on numerous occasions during the course of Aaron's trial by Senior Prosecution Counsel Brendan Grehan, by Martin Beggy, Superintendent Martin Beggy, by Senior Investigating Officer Mr. Pat Murray, that Aaron Brady had nothing to do with the robbery 11 months prior to the murder at Lordship Credit Union. So we see immediately that the information simply does not stack up. It's contradictory immediately. And the reason why I showed that little article there, and there are numerous articles, if you Google, you can see in relation to the information on Gardaí released at the time of the murder and robbery. And we can see here quite clearly the 5 days after, Pat Murray and the incident room in Fort Apache, Garda Barracks in Dundalk, had a mindset that these are the people, they knew who the gang were, without any investigation actually being really done at that point in time. Pat Murray and we believe Sergeant John Maroney went down a rabbit hole, and several months later refused to come back until Pat Murray was shoved out, albeit through ill health to a degree, and removed from the investigation. So if those of you who have a mind to do so, please go back, look at the information that was released in the days immediately after the robbery and the murder, and you will see the contradictions quite clearly. And it's something we really wanted to highlight, and it harks back then to a situation where Pat Murray has told us, again, very clearly, during the course of this podcast that was created in association with Ian Doyle and Stephen Breen from, I don't know whether it's the Star or the Sun, some of them ragtop newspapers. It's a podcast. Please go and listen to it. 4 parts, Making a Detective, where Pat Murray tells us quite clearly that at the end of 2016, the investigation had absolutely nothing. No, we have nothing. Pat Murray came back into the investigation, and all that was looking at him was white faces. So that tells us quite clearly Murray, Maroney, and those in Fort Apache went down the wrong rabbit hole, missed all the relevant evidence. Those that did carry out the murder and robbery had, to all intents and purposes, disappeared into the ether, and there wasn't a scintilla of evidence, not a scintilla of evidence to place Aaron Brady or the other suspects that are A and B. There was nothing to place them at the scene of the murder and robbery. So that gives us some idea from the Burnsite. They just assumed that this car was used, and we have shown quite clearly it was not the vehicle. And again, we have to ask the question, 35 kilometres, 27 miles has been travelled, and there's only CCTV footage at point A and point B. Point A being Lordship Credit Union, point B being Court School, approximately 3 or 4 miles from the Burnsite, which in itself is quite suspicious, shall we say. Because as I look across the road here, allegedly the DPP and the Garda Síochána told us the car travelled past our house here. And there is business directly across the road, a fuel station, and CCTV footage would have shown, if nothing else, lights going past that would coincide in a timeline travelling from A to B. But that wasn't possible because it simply did not happen. Another worrying, there's several worrying aspects of this, and again, the laughable and the farcical takes precedent here. The CCTV footage from the school at Cortamlet. Two vehicles were shown in court with the grainy CCTV footage. One passing the school at 22:04 and one passing the school at 22:06. It's very relevant to mention here, and it's in the videos. I think there are 10 videos listed below, and they're all in relation to the Burnsite. And we cover all these points in much more detail. But I'm just going to give you a brief bullet point in relation to each of the sort of the events, the incidents, and the evidence as it was put forward. So an expert was taken on board by the DPP and Garda Síochána. He looked at the blind, it's called a blind analysis. So obviously he had no information from Garda Síochána. And he looked at the blind analysis of these vehicles passing the school, and his initial reaction was that an SUV was one of the two vehicles. Now that didn't suit the narrative for Fort Apache. So what happens in this case, as SUV should have been used in the reconstruction. And he explains it quite well, that he believed that the tail lights were higher than the headlights, which give the opinion that it was probably an SUV or a Jeep of some sort that passed the school. But would you believe, under the advice of Garda Kenna, who told us himself he's an expert in nothing, he does know what a BMW looks like, he did tell us that. The advice from Garda Kenna to the expert was not to use an SUV, to use other vehicles, obviously a Passat and a BMW. I think they may have used a Renault 9 also. So it gives us some, not some, but a very good insight into the chicanery that was going on when Kenna and the expert were working together to create a false narrative and to put tags and names on vehicles that simply was incorrect, was false, was misleading. It was a tissue of lies. So we have two vehicles passing the school at 22:04 and 22:06. We then go to the first eyewitness, a farmer working in his yard, and we've been to the site several times to film, and again it's in the videos listed below. And the farmer had a very close view, and he was in his yard. There's serious issues over the times of the farmer working in his yard, but that's something that will be aired out at a later stage. He sees one vehicle, and it is a BMW. He's certain it's a BMW, but he tells us quite clearly, it's mentioned 14 times in a short statement, that the vehicle had blue lights. The BMW had blue lights. Now, suspect A's car, whom the DPP and Garda Síochána portrayed that this was suspect A's BMW that drove down into Darkley, down Cortamlet Road and up Charlie Beatty Road past this farmer's yard. And he's quite close. His yard is directly on the road. So he was only about 10 or 12 yards from the road. And he seen the car quite clearly coming from his left to right, heading towards the Burnsite, and 20 minutes later returning from his right to left. So the simple and the bottom line is here, suspect A's car, BMW, does not have the blue bulbs. I'm sure most of us remember back to when the young lads were putting blue bulbs into their headlights. I'm nearly sure at the moment, I think it's actually illegal now. So it's not allowed. But at that moment in time, back in 2013, suspect A did not have blue bulbs in his headlights. So the vehicle that passed that farmer on Charlie Beatty Road was not suspect A's car with Aaron Brady in it. And then we have a situation where the farmer was in the yard for 2 hours and he only seen one vehicle. So Garda Kenna and Brendan Graham and these people want us to believe, is it, that the Passat was in the boot of the BMW as it passed Charlie Beatty Road on that farm. It simply didn't happen. It is a curated and manufactured story. It is nonsense. And it shows the levels that these people stoop to create a false narrative and to tell you and to tell the jury and to tell the court a tissue of lies. And again, you may ask why this wasn't questioned. A lot of this information, particularly at the Burnsite, I had given to our first legal team, our first firm of solicitors, and they did not pass this information on to to Aaron's senior counsel, to Aaron's barristers. It's as simple as that. And I will repeat. I'll actually finish with witness 2, and then I'll explain what happened to us in the court. So we move on then. One car, pharmacy in one car. And yes, he said the vehicle was extremely loud, a very loud BMW. And guess what? Suspect is BMW is fitted with a silencer. So Garda Kenna and the experts portrayed a tissue of lies in the court in relation to the vehicle that passed that farmer. So then we move on to the second witness, and we're sort of rewinding now back to the school. And this second gentleman was on the way to pick up his kids from the local youth club at 10:30 p.m. So we have a time anchored, and he was running late. And he met two vehicles more or less nose to tail. They might, I think, 25, 50 yards apart. So this gentleman was put up in the stand. He was questioned, I think maybe by Mr. Stain. And the gentleman gave his evidence and told the court that he had seen these vehicles at 10:30. Now, to all intents and purposes, the vehicles who passed the school and we've seen on CCTV footage at 22:04 and 22:06. 4, 5, 6 minutes up to the Burnsite, and maybe a couple of minutes to get the car on fire. So we'll say the car was on fire at 10:15. How, in the love and honour of God, did a man meet the car at 10:30? This is how farcical and how contrived this whole story is. And again, we go and I'm sure you're asking the question, how did this get through the court? Again, we had raised this issue with our first legal team. We had given all this information and it is still there to be seen. There's folders I had given to that first legal team. And it was never given to our barristers. So myself and Caroline were sitting in the court, and we are the only ones allowed in relation to Aaron because of COVID at the time. We were the only, as far as I'm aware, we are the only court case that was running during COVID in Western Europe. So we were of the opinion, and well, I was definitely of the opinion that at some stage we would bring these people back and they would be re-questioned and the times would be gone over. But unfortunately, that's not the way the court works. They were cross-examined by our barristers, but our barristers did not have the relevant information in respect of the times and how the times broke down and didn't correlate. And there's a number of very serious issues. Obviously, if the two vehicles were the vehicles used in the modern robbery at 22:30, it would be physically impossible for Aaron Brady to have been back into Crossmaglen, showered, and at his girlfriend's house before 11 p.m. Physically impossible, could not be done. So this whole information is farcical, it's nonsensical, and it makes us very, very angry. But we've gone over it so many times, it has become, I think we've become a little bit immune to it, which is probably wrong. But it is disgusting that these men that are professional investigators in NCBI, in Fort Apache, Dundalk, push this bullshit past a jury and a senior judge. But they done it because they had made such a mess of the initial part of the investigation. The rabbit hole that Mary and Maroney was stuck down, and the evidence was gone by the time they had realised it in Fort Apache in the incident room. Another thing then, we move on, which is very, very worrying. As far as we are concerned, and we've raised this point with GSOC and Garda Commissioner Drew Harris, and we have recorded deliveries of information we sent to these, both GSOC and to the Phoenix Park, to Garda Commissioner Drew Harris. There is a witness statement from another gentleman who heard a loud, dark vehicle pass his property just after 10 p.m. And this witness statement has disappeared. This man wasn't brought to court. There may be something in it, there may be nothing in it, but there is a statement. And the reason why this statement is so relevant is, if I can explain, the vehicles, if they are telling the truth, the vehicles would have been travelling north to northwest to get from Lordship Credit Union to the Burnsite. The gentleman whose statement appears to be missing lives and is situated to the west, very much to the west of the Burnsite. And his statement will coincide as the vehicle travelled past him and on past the farmer working in his yard. And if this vehicle here was seen as the same vehicle, it means it is impossible for that vehicle to have anything to do with what happened at Lordship Credit Union. If there was any credibility in the prosecution and the DPP story. It is a total farce in relation to the Burnsite. And we repeat once again, just before I finish, and it's the human aspect, it's the common sense aspect of this whole case. And I say again, without fear of contradiction, and I think I've mentioned this before, if I had a bad tyre, if you had no tax on your car, we would not, from where we are here in South Armagh, quite close to Crossmaglen, Silver Bridge, to the North Louth border, you wouldn't travel down in towards Newtown Hamilton. You simply wouldn't do it. It is somewhat detached from where we live here. And the idea that young men from this area where we live would drive a stolen vehicle after being involved in a modern robbery, drive it 35 kilometres down into a predominantly Protestant area, to an area that is very heavily policed by the PSNI, and there would be numerous areas where there would be PSNI road checks. And there would be numerous areas along the road where vehicles, particularly when they turned off the main Armagh-Dundalk road, the vehicles meeting each other would have to stop and pull in. There's only room for one vehicle. So this whole story that was presented by Garda Kenna and Mr. McGooey is a total pack of lies, we say. And again, I think I have offered this before, that we would show these times and sites to any of our mainstream journalists. And I am sure, I always refer back to Barry Cummins on the primetime programme. He took himself off down to the yard where Aaron was on the night of the modern robbery, where Aaron was laundering the diesel. And at least Barry Cummins had done something that in Garda Síochána didn't even bother doing. Going to the yard where Aaron Brady told him he was. And this again shows us the arrogance And I would say, I can possibly say here, the stupidity of Pat Marry and others that did not go to the yard where Aaron Brady said he was. So what I'm saying here is, I am sure Barry Cummins, in fact he did in the primetime programme, go to the laneway where the vehicle was burned out. But he didn't do any analysis or look closely at the laneway. And he never said, well, it would be impossible for a BMW with a full body kit to travel up this lane. It would be physically impossible. On Garda Síochána have suspect A's BMW. And it would be more than clear that it would have been damaged if it had driven up that lane. And or we have to believe that someone ran up and down the lane to burn the Passat. It is the height of nonsense. And this has to come to an end sooner rather than later. Because it is a pathetic attempt by the authorities to frame a young man, to frame our son. Because Aaron Brady had nothing to do with the murder and robbery at Lordship Credit Union. And the evidence presented by the authorities in this part of the case shows that clearly, that it is what it is, a complete and utter stitch-up. There can be no other explanation or no other heading put on what these, we'll call them people, have done. Not only to us, but to all the families involved in what happened in Lordship Credit Union car park. And our family and our son had nothing to do with what happened in that car park. And I think a lot of people are coming to realise that now. I think that's it. That gives us a brief overview of what happened at the Burnsite. As I said, the videos are below the list. Please look through them. Any questions, any queries you have, please send them to us and we'll deal with them. Because sometimes we've looked at it so much, we may miss something that's glaringly obvious to you, the public. But we'd be more than happy to interact with you and answer any questions, queries that you do have. Thank you all again for watching. I believe someone asked last night, Lisa asked in relation to sending something in Taran. It'd be wonderful, little note, let them know you're there supporting the campaign, watching the campaign, and hopefully you'll be able to say on that note that you have serious concerns about the safety of his conviction. And that's all we're looking for at this moment in time. And when the time is right, we will prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Aaron Brady had nothing to do with the murder and robbery at Lordship Credit Union. I think Caroline's going to put up the address and Aaron's prison number, 74326. And then we know. And I would ask if you do send, if you feel you can, if you do send something into Aaron, please put a little note on our social media sites, even privately, and then we can let Aaron know that something has been sent to Portlaoise Prison. I think on Tuesday night now we're going to move on to the fictional gang, and obviously we know, we've seen on CCTV footage, 5 people were involved. We know that the female with the blonde hair, 25 to 30-year-old blonde woman, has been airbrushed. She's gone, she's disappeared, but we know she was there. That is fact. That is coming from someone who is looking directly at her. We have a gentleman with a Dublin accent. He's gone. And we know for a fact that one of the raiders who attacked Bernadette's car, the credit union worker, had a Dublin accent. There's no one with a Dublin accent linked to Aaron. There's no woman, 25 to 30-year-old with blonde hair linked to Aaron. So the gang is fictional. We are now heading very closely to the 10th anniversary. And if there was any credence whatsoever on what the Irish authorities have portrayed, there would be 5 people incarcerated. But we'll see, hopefully sooner rather than later, as the whole situation progresses, how that develops. Once again, thank you so much for watching. It's very much appreciated. Thank you for your interaction. I apologise for what happened last night, the gremlins. And just to say again, these live videos are specifically to give you, the Irish public, and anyone who's interested, a library of how to navigate through the Justice for Our Brady campaign. So this evening's video, as it says, is the Burnsite, and the videos below are all videos we've created specifically in relation to the details and the evidence presented in relation to the Burnsite, obviously. Thank you once again. We'll see you on Tuesday evening. Have a lovely and peaceful rest of the weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday evening. Thank you very much. Thank you.